This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on the Huddle Sports Network. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Ed Smith. Got some Pistons, Tigers, and Red Wings to talk about, including a very awkward base running mistake by Zach McKinstry, and some Red Wings off-season talk from General Manager Steve Yzerman. But first, our top story, the Pistons surprisingly fire head coach Monty Williams. Well, he's owed like $65 million, but here's what surprised me. There was a report earlier from earlier last week or a week and a half ago that he was the team was likely to keep him, considering they hired Trajan Langdon and Greg Vinson as assistant coach. Langdon as the president of basketball operations. And it's all the former New Orleans Pelican family with Monty Williams, but he was an NBA champion with the Phoenix Suns, but he just failed to deliver in the Motor City. And
he wasn't an NBA champion.
Ownership was expected to fire Monty Williams, though, by the way.
Yeah, before I start, quick correction, Taylor. Monty Williams did take the Suns to the NBA Finals, but they did not win the championship.
Oh, that's right, the Bucks. Yeah, the Bucks beat them.
That's right.
Yeah, but, so an Western Conference champion, rather.
Yes, but to delve further on this topic, first and foremost, I think I can't really say it's a surprise because a lot of people were asking, if not outright begging, for this to happen when you consider the fact that, even though it was one season, it was a horrific season filled with losing streaks, filled with national punchlines, the Pistons being a laughingstock in front of the entire nation for most of the season. You have Monty Williams finding ways to inexplicably play certain players over other certain players, namely Killian Hayes getting more minutes and more playing time than Jaden Ivey, when clearly the opposite should have been happening. When you factor all that into consideration, and also that first and foremost, Monty was pretty much upfront honest with us when he said at this press conference 1 year ago, that frankly, if it wasn't for the money, he would not have taken his job. And frankly, it showed in his body language, in his demeanor, and how he approached the game, and how he developed certain players or lack thereof. It showed. I can't say I blame him per se, but what an incredible waste of time that turned out to be for all sides involved. I mean, think about this. You got a 14-68 record. You've set or at least tied a record for the longest losing streak in league history. And on top of all that, you limited the development of your supposedly key core players for the future, namely Jaden Ivey and I would say Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson to an extent. So between the lineups, the inexplicable lineup switches, the moves the head scratching moves that made you wonder what the heck was he doing in terms of late game situations, rotational situations, and so on and so on and so forth. The more that fans were to believe that there's no way that this charade can go on, no matter how much money he's owed, no matter how many years that's left. this had to end sooner rather than later. Thankfully, I will give Tom Gores credit for this, even though Trajan Langdon was having meetings, having discussions of what to plan out broadly for the future of the team. It's clear that this was a Tom Gores move. I have no problem with this being a Tom Gores move. This had to be done.
Yeah, it had to be. So, just a question to our audience out there. The Pistons questions of the week to our viewing audience: who should the Pistons hire as head coach and general manager? Because there's still no head coach hired and no general manager hired yet. But we've discussed this on our last episode, haven't we?
Yeah, we discussed it a bit last week about what type of role or how type of front office that the Pistons want to shape themselves at. Obviously, they're taking some influence by plucking some guys from the New Orleans Pelicans regime that worked under or worked with Trajan Langdon to an extent. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see that kind of influence work its way into the potential head coach hire. I'm not sure of how the general manager hire will go, but I do say this. I will say this rather. The draft is this week. It's coming up. I think even if you don't have a hire ready in place in time for the draft to start, you will want to know what type of future or what type of shape, what type of culture, what type of strategy, what type of build that you want to build your team around. I think it starts by having a head coach in place, coach that has an identity of what type of system he wants to run, what type of offense or defense that he prefers, and so on and so forth. So that once you get that out the way, then you figure out your assistant coaches that clearly that we've been seeing some of the hires that we talked about last week. Now, in terms of these replacement hires, I think one that has to go to the top of the list, some have talked about it, would be James Borrego. Borrego worked with Langdon last year extensively throughout his tenure in New Orleans and was seen to be as a potential candidate for the Cleveland Cavaliers job after they got rid of J.B. Bickerstaff. Now, it was reported earlier today Kenny Atkinson will now be the Cleveland Cavaliers head coach. So you can scratch Atkinson off of that potential list. Anybody that was wondering, what were the Pistons going to do? Because obviously, in light of recent coach hires, namely J.J. Redick going to the Lakers, now with this Cavs hire, that leaves things wide open now as to who the Pistons could get. So James Borrego is one name I mentioned or heard of. J.B. Bickerstaff, I just mentioned him. He was recently let go by Cleveland, but he did get them to the playoffs this past season. That should be taken into consideration of some degree. Other names, some may sound familiar to Pistons fans. One was Sean Sweeney. This year, he was understaffed as an assistant for Jason Kidd and the Mavs. He worked here in Detroit previously under Dwayne Casey's tenure. He helped coach the defense under Coach Casey, and he's been seen as someone who is in high favor with a certain Luka Doncic. So the fact that Luka was even trying to recruit Sweeney to even coach the Slovenian national team. That's how serious and how much high praise that Luka, one of the best players in the league, has for Sean Sweeney at this current time. But there's other names. You got Johnny Bryant, who's an associate coach with the Knicks. You got Chris Quinn, who's been the right-hand man for Eric Spoelstra, arguably the best coach in the league right now throughout this time here in Miami with the Heat. Another name that might sound familiar to Pistons fans might be Micah Nori. He was a coach here before as well. I believe might have been under Dwayne Casey as well. But currently he was the assistant coach for the Minnesota Timberwolves on their run to Western Conference Finals. And if you remember, he had to fill in during that playoff run for their head coach, Chris Finch, as a result of Finch suffering a leg injury after being collided into by a player. And I dare say that Nori did a darn good job with his fill-in role. And another name I think that should at least worth mentioning could be David Adelman. He is also an assistant, but he is out of Denver with the Nuggets. So a lot of names, a lot of candidates to consider. I doubt this would be, again, unless they're very much zeroed in on Borrego, I will be interested to see if this will be wrapped up. If not in time for the draft by Wednesday, then maybe sometime shortly after, maybe by the weekend or so, because it feels that even if they don't have a general manager role filled out per se, Trajan Langdon know what he at least has some type of role of vision of what he wants to do in terms of building this team for the future. So you'll see that represented hopefully within the next few days, as to whether or not they'll make a swift decision, or if it's a thorough decision, or one that had a lot of thought at the very least.
All right. So great job narrowing those down. So the Tigers, they're slipping 36-42, fourth place in the AL Central, 15 games back of that, and then 6.5 games and 5 spots back of the third American League wildcard spot. I want to touch on one thing, actually a couple things, actually. First off, Ryan Kreidler, a 269 OPS, hitting below 100, 092. Yeah, he didn't play yesterday.
At this point, you wonder whether I should be sent down, but who the hell are they going to bring up?
Yeah, because Javier Baez is still on the injured list.
Oh, goodness. At this point, you're going to have to, it's a pick your poison. You have to suffer through this particular illness to get back to your regularly scheduled illness when he gets back from injury. Nice.
Correction, 0.095 batting average for Kreidler. And then Zach McKinstry made the by far the stupidest base running mistake ever in the history of Major League Baseball, which led to a triple play.
Yeah, I think it was the rare 1-3-5 triple play. That's something that we haven't seen since the 1920s.
Wow.
Yeah,
Zach McKinstry has got to become a meme. I mean, if he can't, then there's something wrong.
Well, at this point, we should be more concerned about this team is winning, whether or not they're winning games, as opposed to whether or not they're going to be in memes. And if they're memes, that means they're not playing good. As you can see, the fact that they got swept by the Braves. Yeah, they won 2 out of 3 against the White Sox, but guess what? They're the friggin' White Sox. If you don't win 2 out of 3 against them, my goodness. But in the midst of all that, you got Maeda losing 5 straight. You got Skubal losing 2 straight, giving up 4 earned runs in back-to-back starts. This series, which started tonight against Philly, one of the best teams in all of baseball. You got Bryce Harper and Alec Braum going off with 5 extra base hits and 8 RBIs. You kind of knew what to expect, at least with this matchup, no matter who was pitching against them. So the fact now, like I said, now they're 6 games back now.
6.5 games back.
My goodness. So that must mean Boston or Kansas City won tonight. So of course, that's another game to tack on. So it's starting to get to a point where, hey, is the rubber meeting the road? Is the season starting to become lost? And if so, do you now consider shifting or changing your focus or attitude of what you want to do with the trade deadline? Because if this gets too out of hand before we get to the deadline, then they may have to very well at least consider being sellers. As much as I don't like to say that, you have to take that into consideration.
Speaking of selling, there were a couple articles that about the Tigers that urged them to sell. Because, from Motor City Bengals and Bless You Boys, I think.
Thing is, who will they be giving up, and who would they be willing to give up is the question. Probably the most more important question.
There's been a lot of talk on social media trading Tarek Skubal away.
Exactly.
That's what I've been reading.
That's usually the most lightly rod discussion I've been seeing amongst Tigers Twitter. Like, hey, if they're gonna make a move, would this be the move? Myself, I lean towards no, because if you keep getting rid of all of your core pieces, what are you gonna have to build a future towards on? Especially with some rental that may not work out and may leave you at season's end or in a couple of years anyway because they don't want to be here. No, there's a reason why people have seen teams that succeed often build through the draft, because not only do they draft their right talent, but they find a way to keep them as long as possible.
Right.
And they don't foolishly give them away for a bag of beans that turn out to be bean seeds.
No, because that's never good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Man, Zach McKinstry still gets on my nerves. He is stupid as a fielder and as a base runner. But that being said, Kenta Maeda needs to be released after the entire regular season is done and over with. I think Zach McKinstry needs to be sent back down after the season, or just released.
Frankly, Taylor, you could just say that about damn near the whole entire team, except for maybe 3 or 4 dudes.
Yeah, because this just isn't good enough for either of us.
All right, we can't hit, we can't score runs. What are we doing? This is the worst division in baseball, and it wasn't for the fact that the White Sox are complete ass juice. This team would be in last place.
Yeah, 21-59, by the way, are the White Sox.
Uh-huh.
Oh, Lord. The Red Wings, let's get to them. A few notes here. The Red Wings are not expected to extend defenseman Moritz Seider and forward Lucas Raymond until after July 1st, they will, quote unquote, take up a nice chunk of cap space. Yeah, see, there are two parts of it there. After July 1st, I'm patient with it. It's free agency. It's near. July 1st is the first day of free agency. Just got 7 or 8 more days, maybe 9. But of course they're going to take up a chunk of cap space, which might deter Patrick Kane's future with the Red Wings. Yzerman and Patrick, general manager Steve Yzerman and Patrick Kane's agent Pat Brisson will, quote unquote, stay in touch about Patrick Kane's free agency plans. Speaking of Yzerman, he does not anticipate 3 goaltenders next season. Husso really needs to stay in Grand Rapids. Otherwise, just boot him off this organization. And then good news: Dylan Larkin did suffer an injury at the IIHF World Championships, but he underwent successful surgery and is expected to be ready for training camp at Center Ice Arena in Traverse City, which is September.
I thought it was originally reported that he had suffered the injury late at the regular season, not at the IFHAs.
Oh,
This was an upper
but
body
from
injury.
what I read, it was an injury that he suffered at the World Championships, but he's expected to be ready regardless.
Or it could have been an injury that he suffered in March was another report that I had read. Because remember, there was a point that he went down for a couple of weeks, and that's when the Red Wings season collapsed.
Yeah, that's.
So
it might have been the same. It might have been the same one.
Yeah, it just got worse. That's all.
Oh yeah, he re-aggravated it. Gotcha. But either way, he underwent successful surgery, and he's expected to be ready. So that's good news.
Exactly. So, in terms of what Yzerman's going to want to do with Raymond and Seider, obviously he's going to pay them. Obviously he's going to sign them. It's just a factor of, okay, how much are you going to be getting? How much will that tie into the strategy of what free agents are going to be going after? And frankly, like you said, where does this tie in to Patrick Kane? Will this lead to him either staying or possibly going? So there's many ways to where that can go.
All right. So anything else before we get to what we've learned?
Yeah, a quick mention of note that as a bit of a off-glance reaction to the Trajan Langdon press conference, Tom Gloris, the owner himself, was late to the presser because, of course, he was. Other than his own awkward presentation, he did say that, or stress the importance of wanting someone who embodied the personification of a CEO. And you could tell the vibes that he liked and saw with Trajan Langdon were the complete opposite and antithesis of what we saw from Troy Weaver. And thank goodness that is the case, because in terms of demeanor, tone, cadence, etc., Trajan Langdon, it looks to be the complete and total opposite of Troy Weaver. Hopefully that also factors its way out to be a good thing in terms of both in the front office, how he handles himself in public with the media, with fans, and also most especially how he puts together the basketball team. And also, quick note, this will be our last episode before the NBA draft this upcoming week. So by the time we next talk to you all, we will be discussing discussing what the Pistons did or potentially did not do during the NBA draft, because there was a bit of a quote that Langdon had mentioned during his press conference. Now, I'm not sure it was caught up by many, but he mentioned the fact that whether or not we'll be at five, whether we'll be at five or not, depending on what we'll do with that pick, leads me to believe that they are at least considering the possibility of trading down. And we'll see how what they'll use or what they'll do with that pick, considering who they'll be making deals with. But if they stay, there are at least at least a couple of players that could be available for them to pick up at. To me, if you're going into this as to what they could, as to who they need to get in the first round, obviously a high end caliber player that has a way of excelling and primarily shooting. You would hope to have some defense attached to it as well, but primarily he needs to have some shooting, because when you have players like Cade and Ivy, guards that want to, move the ball around and move around the floor a lot, they got to find shooters that they can get the ball to that can make the better pay. So, knowing that, I think there's at least two players that you might have to look for in terms of at least very much so shooting, but also defense as well. Two guys to look at could be Dalton Connect and Cody Williams. Cody Williams is one name you can easily spell. In terms of Dalton Connect, his last name is spelled Knecht. He's from Tennessee, I believe. And Cody Williams, I want to say he's from Iowa, if I'm not mistaken. It could be a different college. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's either Iowa, Missouri. I'm getting the school college mixed up. But I know Dalton Connect is from Tennessee. He's a prolific sharpshooter. He's been seen as one of the best shooters, if not the best shooting prospect in this draft. He's projected as having a high ceiling or be seen as a potential elite level scorer or shooter in the league. So that's one name to be on the lookout for if he's available for the Pistons at 5.
All right. So the NBA draft probably, it's got to be. Is it Wednesday or Thursday?
I believe it's this Wednesday. I want to say Wednesday. It could be Thursday, but I want to say it's Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm checking the guide right about now, and it looks like it's on ESPN, and it is Wednesday. You were right the first time, so it's 8 o'clock on Wednesday. Same night. I'm taking my dad to a Traverse City Pittsburghs game, by the way. But I will get notifications on my phone about the Pistons draft picks, or top draft pick at least. So, that being said, what did we learn?
Well, frankly, we learned quite a few things. We learned that the Tiger season is slowly spiraling out of control. It's becoming a bit of a train wreck, and they can't seem to find a way to get a grip on themselves in terms of their offense. And now it seems starting to spread to their pitching. Like I mentioned, with Maeda losing on his losing streak, now even Tariq Skubal starting to get on the slide of himself. It's quite unwelcoming. It's quite uncomfortable. It's starting to become uncomfortable to look at, and now you're looking at players committing triple play errors with bad base running. It's becoming a mess all around. We also learned that the Red Wings are definitely leaning towards, I should say, more than likely appearing to be getting ready to sign Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond to new deals. It's just a matter of figuring out how can they factor that into their budget and their cap space, and whether or not this means that Patrick Kane will be returning to Detroit or not. Because even though Eisman is staying in touch with Pat Brisson, Kane's agent, Kane will still be testing free agency. And also, we learned that an update on Dylan Larkin. He did recently got surgery done on an upper body injury. Best of luck to him. He should be ready by training camp. And we learned that the Pistons are all about business. We're definitely all about business by getting rid of Monty Williams, doing this right before the draft. I don't know what kind of message it sent, but it definitely sends a message.
Yep, it definitely did. So that's what we've learned on another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. I'm Taylor Phillips, He's Ed Smith. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Michigan_Truth, and like its Facebook page. Subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Like our videos, turn on all notifications on the bell icon, and watch each of our episodes in full to help improve our watch hours. Also, follow it and listen to it in audio form on Spreaker. Follow me on X, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at DT2Phillips. Follow Ed Smith on X, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at EdSmith313. Business endorsements go to Athletico Physical Therapy on Woodward in Ferndale, the B4 Foundation, Cali Tickets. Call Mark Goldman at 877-225-8425 or visit CaliTickets.com. Follow them on X at Cali Tickets and on Instagram at Cali Tickets. Like their Facebook page as well. Creative Embroidery of Cadillac for designing the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast logo on my long sleeve shirt and Cuts by Melanie in Lake City. I have an appointment this Friday at 1 to get my hair cut. Let's Roll With It, Rolled Ice Cream in Cadillac. Follow them on TikTok at the Food Mafia LLC. Like their Facebook page and follow them on Instagram at the Food Mafia Rolled Ice Cream. Last week's flavor of the week was white chocolate peanut butter Reese's. I know my mom doesn't like white chocolate because she thinks it tastes weird, but I love it because it tastes very sweet. Northern Star Event Rentals in Cadillac. Like their Facebook page. Call Heather Krzyzewski at 231-884-8195. Union Barber in Birmingham and Ferndale. United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan. United Mobile Power Wash and Dry Ice Works in Southfield, and Wellbeing with Catherine Palms in the Traverse City area. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is a presentation of the Huddle Sports Network. We'll be back next week or so. Until then, for Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips, signing off. Remember, we observe and detect the truth about sports in the state of Michigan because the truth is out there. Stay on the lookout and know the truth. Ta-ta. Hit them with a hind. Baba booey to y'all.
Take care, everybody. Be safe.